Cycle Jerks.
Hey, get out of the road, dummy.
Cycle Jerks Podcast.
All right, welcome everybody to Cycle Jerks Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Stewart, flying solo this week. My co-host, Chris, that damn Trek company. Yeah, managing that Trek store. Anyway, he can't make it this week, so no big deal. I'm very excited to have this young man on the podcast. I've been trying to get him on here for about a year or so. And he's a freelance adventurer, and he also takes pictures and makes videos. Avery
That's a good
Stumm,
one.
welcome to the podcast.
That's a great way to describe it. I'm gonna start saying it now. That's what I do. Freelance adventurer.
Yes. Well, I was, in prepping for you coming on, I was looking at your Instagram and I was just like Nepal, France, Leadville.
Sure.
What was the other one? Oh, the crazy one in the snow, fat tire one. Anyway,
Oh goodness.
you're doing all kinds of cool stuff, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We try. I stay busy enough. Sometimes a little in over my head, but the train keeps rolling. So
hmm
fun.
And so I read that you had recently quit your job to freelance full time.
Yeah,
How's that
exactly.
going?
It's good. It's scary. I've been freelance for, let's just call it about 3 years now.
hmm
So I'm no stranger to the freelance life, but when I moved out to Boulder, I immediately took a job at Scratch Labs, who's based
Oh,
here,
sweet.
the nutrition company.
Yep.
They needed an in-house photographer, videographer, and I did 1 year out here alone freelance, and then I discovered maybe it's good to get a savings account built up again. So I took an in-house position there at Scratch just to get my feet back under me for a bit and kind of understand where I sit in the industry. And I really enjoy those guys. They've been friends of mine for a while. So when the opportunity presented itself, I went that route for a bit and spent the last year and a half at Scratch. And then in a true freelance nature, I kind of got bored, if you will, and thought maybe there's a little more and maybe build something a little different than I did before. So back to the freelance life.
Yeah, man. Well, it seems like it's working. I mean, looking at social media, it looks like it's working out just swimmingly. You're all over the world and doing all these really rad, cool events, and
Yeah.
looks awesome. We usually like to find out, like, when did you get started with bikes? How did it all start for you?
Yeah, it's funny because I guess my bike story has nothing to do with the bikes that I ride today, but my love for bikes all started with BMX. It was
Yeah.
all freestyle, not racing. Sort of just a thing where I started to skateboard, wasn't really good at that, didn't fit in the culture, but still loved the whole scene, the photography, more that, street style of things. And then slowly but surely it just transitioned into BMX and I sort of had a lot of more friends that were riding BMX. So I hopped on that train.
hmm
And then kind of the same thing. I realized I was pretty clumsy myself. I wasn't too talented of a bike handler, but at the same time, I had taken an interest in photography. Um, and a lot of my friends were starting to go pro in the sport and, get sponsorship deals, and they all needed photos. So I kind of just naturally fell into that camera side of things. I still rode, but
hmm
cameras definitely took hold of the most of the bike portion.
Yeah. Well, that's another way of expressing creativity. Like
Yeah.
when we talk about freestyle BMX or skateboarding, that's an expression of creativity a lot of times and
Yeah.
perseverance and all kinds of other things. But creativity is a big part of that. And, certainly with photography,
Mhm.
everyone takes pictures now because of their
Sure.
phones, but
Yeah.
not everybody takes good pictures, you know?
That's the thing. It's funny. People always ask me when they're trying to get into photography, videography, they say, "Oh, what's the point? It's too crowded. The industry's too crowded. Should I even start?" And my usual response to that is, "Well, everything's crowded, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing that I'm doing that not everyone else is doing. The difference is everyone can take photos, but there's not a lot of people taking great photos.
Yeah.
There's always
Yeah.
room for better work."
Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I actually had in my early years with Giant, I had an account down in Willow Glen, San Jose area, and the owner of the shop was this guy named Reggie Caselli, and he spent a great deal of his younger life as a photographer for Thrasher magazine.
Sure.
And man, he had some great stories. Holy
Yeah.
smokes, man. Because you mentioned the culture, right? The culture is
Yeah.
not easy to fit in. At least
Yeah.
it depends on where you're located too. There's different cultures, obviously, with skateboarding in different areas, but it is generally a pretty rough crowd, and they like to party, and yeah, it's not for everybody, but as a photographer in his position, it was really great because he wasn't expected to party, and yet he was going to, Upland for the bowl, whatever. He was just traveling all over, photograph, taking pictures of killer skaters doing
Mhm.
great stuff and just having a time of his life.
Yeah.
So sounded pretty ideal.
It's pretty funny you mentioned that because like I would say BMX culture follows kind of suit. And again, we were 16 to 18 years old. We were just
Yep.
trying to figure it out and rough it. And that's sort of where I started to learn everything. If you know that era in skateboarding and BMX, we went to a place called Camp Woodward every year.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of where I really got my skills honed in because all the most talented BMX riders were there, skateboarders were there, you name it. And they'd all come to this one like little compound, if you will, and just train and take photos. And it's it's funny because back then, after even like, post Woodward, I would still be on the road with my friends. We were crashing on couches and pinching pennies and sleeping
Yeah.
in tents, wherever we could to get all this stuff done. And now full circle, now that I shoot cycling full time, it's a little more, I don't want to say bougie or posh, but you can
Hmm.
tell who came from that culture versus who's always been sort of started as a cyclist, if you will. It's a much
Right.
different crowd of people. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I get it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're more you have a dirt head history, as we used to call it back in the
Yeah.
day. Yeah,
Yeah,
dirt heads.
exactly.
But yeah, well, all right. So let's talk about this past year. I mean,
Sure.
you've done a lot in the last 12 months.
Sure.
And the thing I forgot when I introduced you was the Tour Divide, right? You did
Sure.
yeah, I mean,
I attempted it. Yes.
700 miles. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty wild. But obviously, when you don't finish something like that, it
Yep.
can gnaw at you a little bit. But still, what an incredible adventure, and something that I would like to do at some point. I'm running out of years, I think.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
58 now. I
It's
better get
funny you
it
say
done
that.
here.
I
Yeah,
would say a majority of the trail goers out there on the divide, my short time I was out there
yeah,
were 50 plus, which was really
right.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's a fair
I was
amount
like,
of
I can always
old.
come back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So, was Nepal this year?
Nepal was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when you're in Nepal, did you make a shot at it? Did you get to the top?
No, Nepal's a funny story. Nepal, I was actually hired as a guide photographer, if you will, for a music artist who's a friend of mine. His name is Mike Posner, for those who may or may not know him. He's a probably his biggest time was 2000 and I don't know, 6 to 16 or so. He was big in the pop world. Um,
Okay.
and I actually listened to his music before I ever met him back in the day.
How cool
Um,
is that?
it was cool. And then,
Yeah.
one day, long story short, through bicycles, I was able to meet the guy. He's actually from Michigan, where I am. And we hit it off and we went on a bike ride. And then, kind of 2 weeks later, his agent or manager, if you will, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we are going to Mount Everest. Would you want to be able to shoot this?" And he's like, "There's one catch. We're leaving in 7 days." And he's like, "We got about 20 people, and Mike hit it off with you, and we'd love for you to shoot it if you're down." And
Oh
yeah,
man.
again, long story short, I made some phone calls and canceled a trip. I was actually about to go to Girona to film with my friend Alexi that next week, and I said, "Hey, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to go shoot this place.
Yeah,
I got a gig I got to take." And 7 days later, I was on a plane to Kathmandu.
man. Wow. How wild. So, okay, so you're there, you're shooting it. They're on a guided trip up Everest.
Yeah,
How far did you go? Did you go?
this is a really unique trip. It was sort of like a high-end experience for people who were a fan of Mike or knew exactly what he
Oh,
was into nowadays, which is a lot of uh, finding yourself and challenging yourself. And
mm-hmm.
basically got together this cool group of 20 people. You had to apply to get in. And it was kind of an all-inclusive guided trek to Everest Base Camp. And that included music performances at base camp. We did a concert at Mount Everest Base Camp. We
Oh,
did
sick.
breath work and, met all the villagers and all stayed together and just kind of had a really cool group experience. But yeah, it was a 12-day, 120-mile hike, roughly, something like that, round trip, and
Wow.
got all the way up to just shy of 19,000 feet up at base
Mm-hmm.
camp. So
Yeah,
yeah, gnarly trip.
dude.
Yeah.
I, you know, yeah, I have some experience with Everesting on a bicycle, right?
Yeah, right.
Completely different though.
Yeah,
Completely different thing because it doesn't involve the crazy elevation challenges
sure.
that you incur, So I've had, I don't know, Mauna Kea?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I've tried Mauna Kea. I've made a couple attempts
no
and
joke.
I can't get past about 12,800 feet.
Yeah.
Like my head
Before you just
feels
go
like it's,
kaboom.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
so frustrating. And then I've only done it 3 times, but I turn around and then like within like I don't know, like 30 seconds, I'm fine, you know?
sure.
And then I stop, and then I'm like, okay, well, listen, I'll make another run at this thing. But then you get to that elevation and it's just like
Yeah, it's funny,
it's
you
super
don't
weird.
you don't really get to decide if it affects you or not.
Yeah,
I was, I guess, just fortunate. Maybe it didn't affect me as much. I started to struggle once I got above like 16,000, 15,500 or so.
okay,
But I mean, we had quite a few people from East Coast Florida, and they had to get heli evacuated. They got
right.
HACE, if you're familiar, high altitude cerebral edema, and they
Yep.
were lights out, and they had to get helied out of there. It's no joke. It's not that the terrain is hard by any means. It is just walking and hiking to get to
Yep.
base camp. But yeah, you it's kind of out of your hands if you have a bad day or not.
Yeah. Yeah. How many people made it out of the 20?
So I think we had, yeah, it was just shy of 20 going up, maybe 18. I think we came back with 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Did
So
everybody turn around at 19,000 or
yeah, base camp itself, don't quote me on this, is just around 17,500 feet or so, right around the 18,000 mark. And then we did a little extra bonus above that, up to like 18,500. There's this beautiful peak called Kalapatar, and we ended our trek there that night. And then probably descended a couple thousand feet or so, 1,500 feet or so, for sleeping that night. So you don't sleep at
okay.
base camp, but just below it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wild. So you didn't get high enough to see any dead bodies or anything crazy, right?
No, definitely not. We
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you are into Everest out there, but it's kind of like the glacier, if you will, before all like the ladders start that you see people crazy throwing down their ladders and crossing these gaps. Like
Oh
that's where
man.
base camp is, right
Okay.
beneath the big fall, and that's where you stop if you're just going to base camp.
Got it. Got it.
Yep.
Man, what an adventure. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
S-
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the most corny way, it was definitely one of the most life-changing experiences I've ever had, just culturally and spiritually, and just being in a place that iconic and sacred is no joke. I definitely
Well,
recommend everyone do it. And to my surprise, our group was a little different scenario, but it's not hard terrain. It's
mhm.
really not, the elevation's tough, but like it's just walking and a lot of walking and a lot
Yeah.
of climbing. But anyone can do it.
Well, you said corny. To me, it would be if you went and did something like that and it wasn't life changing. To me,
Yeah.
that would be corny.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, come on, that's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I didn't
going
mean to cut you
to.
off on the divide either, but the
Yeah,
divide, if you wanted to elaborate more on that, was
yeah,
equally life-changing, just in a totally different way.
sure.
I'm normally the guy behind the camera, but for once I was inspired to, try to go out there and ride my bike from Canada to Mexico. That was equally cool in its own way too.
It's insane. We've had Marie Soleil Blaze on,
Mhm.
who's Canadian. I don't know if you know her, but
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
yeah, she's been on the podcast a couple times. And her Tour Divide experience. She went
Yeah.
from pro, top level pro racer to
Yeah.
adventurer. It's pretty cool.
It seems like that is a pipeline that is becoming more and more common nowadays.
It
Post
does.
fast
Yeah.
career is more adventure.
Well, I know the gravel races have gotten way faster all of a sudden, or not really all of a sudden, I guess, the past few years, but
It
man,
does seem like every year they just somehow get faster and faster and faster
yeah.
and longer. It's who knows what's
Yeah.
next. Wild.
At my age, every year you get slower and slower. It's going the other way, damn it. No matter how hard I try. But
All right.
it's just how it goes. But
Yeah.
and then I saw you were in France, uh,
Yeah.
and the Alpe d'Huez.
Yeah, we got to go to the games this year for Paris.
Right.
Really special. Obviously, not many of yours know exactly what I do, but a big portion of my career now is following around an athlete, Alexy Vermeulen, gravel
Yeah.
pro cyclist in the US, lifetime Grand Prix athlete.
Yeah.
We kind of just do everything together. So his girlfriend is a pro triathlete, and when she got into the games this year, it wasn't a question if we were going or not. So we just went to support her and then made our own adventure out of that and the Alps of France and kind of did
Oh
the whole
man.
thing.
How
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to go to the games at some point. And they're coming to LA here, so
Yeah.
maybe.
Again, it's a one of the most special things. I didn't really I went into it with an open mind thinking, yeah, the Olympics is cool, it's the biggest show possible, but you don't realize till you're there it's a kind of in just an unspoken feeling. It's like there's not many things that unite the entire world
Right.
one place. There was a
Yeah.
crazy quote speaking of skateboarders. It said like there's only like three things that unite the world, and it had to do with it was like war, the U.S. space, whatever, the space station, and
Yeah.
the Olympics. Like
Yeah.
there's not
Yeah.
much that brings everyone together collectively.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's so cool to see both skateboarding and BMX, uh, represented, and when I was a kid racing BMX, it never even occurred to me that that would
Sure.
one day be an Olympic sport, It was just
Yeah.
so, grassroots.
Yeah.
But
It's so grassroots. It's so considered like edgy or alternative, and to
yeah.
see all those disciplines now have their own seat in a
But it
stage.
is really a great spectator sport.
It is.
Right? So you look at gravel racing, you look at mountain biking, even downhilling. Downhilling's pretty great
Yeah.
from a spectator standpoint on TV, but
On
in
TV.
person,
Yeah.
these sports are really tough to,
Good
really
watcher.
watch.
Yeah.
But BMX, man, BMX it's rad.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah,
cool. It's
and
all
it's
designed.
easy to consume, So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think one of the reasons it was so tough to get the sports in there is a lot of the judging is biased or arbitrary, right?
right.
It's all
Yep.
based off who you think, and a
Yeah.
lot of times those sports are so small too. It's like half of the people competing, the judge is your buddy, and
Right.
it's hard to separate that and make sure it's all fair. So
Yeah.
I'm sure they have a long way to go, and there's a lot of opinions about it, but it's cool to see them get their spotlight.
Yeah, and it's drawing better athletes to the sport too, which is
Yeah.
exciting, and more serious, dedicated people.
Hmm.
So yeah, BMX has got a good future, I think.
It's good. It's cool.
Yeah, so I have some time in the Alpe d'Huez. I did Alpe d'Huez a couple
Nice.
summers ago,
Yeah.
and yeah, man, the French Alps. We did the French Alps, the Italian Alps, and the Swiss Alps.
Yeah.
And man, have you been to the Italy?
No. No. I
Yeah.
actually, it's funny. My time in Europe has been very like it's bounced around to just a few. I've been to more obscure places in the world, and then
Uh-huh.
you go Europe, and it's like, oh, I've been to maybe three places.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if you can get to Italy, I can't recommend it enough.
Hmm.
Like I said, we spent the time in the French Alps, this Swiss Alps and the Italian Alps. But
Sure.
the people of Italy,
Mm,
the people, man, the people are amazing.
so
And
cool.
like I'm sure you've heard of Gavia, right? It's in Giro
Yeah.
d'Italia, the Gavia. So we get there, we climb up Gavia, we get into this at the top of Gavia. There's like a restaurant place. We get in
Yeah.
there, we have like a pastry and whatever. We're just kind of hanging out, soaking it all in. Some dude just whips out an accordion and they start playing Italian folk songs. Pretty soon, the whole place is just singing. I felt like I
Love
was
it.
in a Scorsese movie. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? It was
exactly.
just so, what is happening right now? It's like
Yeah.
a Tuesday afternoon.
That's so
Uh,
cool. And
it
that's
was
just probably
awesome.
that's a daily occurrence or something,
I'm
It's
sure. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And you got to stay on your toes with the Italians, man. They like to have fun.
Yeah,
They're gonna poke you a little bit, and you got to poke back, and
that's cool.
it's really cool. But also the riding, holy smokes,
Mm,
the riding and all and French Alps is awesome too, for
sure.
sure. We did Ventoux and yeah, Alpe d'Huez. I'm trying to remember them all, but yeah, it's kind of a blur. We were there about 2 weeks and rode every day. Yeah,
That's so
it
cool.
was pretty
Yeah,
dope.
I never anticipated. I wouldn't identify as like a roadie first, if you will. I
Sure.
have a really nice road bike. I love road riding here in Boulder. It's becoming more of like my primary bike as of
Yeah.
recent. Um, but being in a place that iconic to road cycling, all I wanted to do is ride. And
Oh
it's funny
yeah.
because I get to go to all these places, right? I film a lot of these things, but that's just it. I'm usually filming them. I'm usually filming someone else riding them. And
Oh.
then I usually don't get to ride this stuff a lot.
Oh
Or
shit.
I usually make it a point to, this is the coolest thing ever. No, I got to come back myself. No camera, just ride. Uh,
Okay. Yeah,
but
because
yeah,
I always thought like you probably ride along in the car, but then maybe there's another, a chance for you to, but it's probably all business, especially when it's a paid, these are paid gigs. So
yeah,
it's not like, although I would imagine with your relation, okay, let's talk about your relationship with Alexi because
sure.
it's pretty cool. And
Yeah,
obviously his dog is legend. But
yeah.
how did that relationship get started?
That's funny. I feel like I tell this story like once every few months because
Oh,
this is a common
sorry.
question. No, no, it's great. I'm getting it more down packed.
Okay.
This actually kind of goes back to the whole BMX story. Alexi and I met just because I DM'd him on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because now, if you look into what we do, we're like interchangeable. We're this inseparable duo right now in
Right.
off-road racing that, I'm the filmer, he's the racer, vice versa. And we kind of like are at each other's sides 24/7. But yeah, this came from when I was kind of in BMX and shooting it and loving it. But, I realized I want to take photos for a living, I think. And there just, to be honest, wasn't that much money in BMX. It was still
Yeah.
pretty core, pretty grassroots. It's all younger kids. And these brands don't exactly have deeper pockets like some cycling companies do who appeal to the masses.
Yeah.
And my dad had always ridden mountain bikes, and I just finally, in the beginning it was, yeah, whatever, Dad, it's BMX for life. I'll never, wear
I was right
spandex.
there with you.
Yeah, that type of thing. And then
Uh,
slowly but surely I
I will
warmed up
never
to
wear
it.
spandex.
I went on a gravel ride with my dad and his friends. He found me a mountain bike. I forgot exactly how it was, just a hardtail, and he's like, "Okay, we're gonna go on a gravel ride." And here I am, cocky 18-year-old, thinking I'm gonna dust these old men, and
Oh
they
yeah.
ruined my life. Um, ruined my life. It was the worst day. I was just in vans on flat pedals on a mountain bike, gravel roads.
Oh yeah. They did
Anyway,
you a big favor.
yeah, long story short, that was the day that I was either never going to touch a big bike again or it was going to motivate me. And thankfully, it motivated me. And that's kind of
Yeah.
how I fell in love with the sport. But to get to it, I'm like, okay, I want to shoot big bikes now. I want to shoot gravel bikes. I want to shoot mountain bikes. And I didn't have anything in my portfolio to ask companies to show, I can shoot this. So
Yeah.
one day I was on a mountain bike trail and Alexi goes whizzing by me in a USA. Um, USA Championship kit. And I'm like, I think I've heard of that kid. He must be local. This is back in Michigan, and found out who it was. I looked him up, and yeah, to be honest, I felt his he needed some help with content. He was a sponsored athlete, but clearly he had just been shooting cell phone photos, and I'm like, I think I could help him, and he could
Yeah.
help. So
Yeah.
just sent him a message, and next thing you know, we met up. It was actually at Seattle we first met, and shot some race photos of him, and then got back to Michigan and kind of got lunch. And since then, we've just been shooting everything together. It's wild.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I would think, I would hope like with a relationship like that, when you go to some place like Alpe d'Huez,
sure.
you would think like, hey man, you want to get your bike and just go get nuts up the hill or what? Is there a little
Yeah.
bit of that since you guys are working together so much, or is it more like, we're just here to get the job done, get the
It
content?
depends. There's times where I'm like, Alexi, I gotta make it a point to ride this, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
We gotta bake in an extra day to travel. We gotta do what it is. Um, Specifically to like the Alpe d'Huez situation, that was like 2 days before. Alexi he was training for Leadville that week. The worst place ever to train in Leadville, arguably. But
yeah.
you're gonna go support your girlfriend if she's in the Olympics. So we
All
had to get it
right.
done.
Uh,
We thought, okay,
so
well, we're in Paris. What's the closest thing we can get to elevation? We got to go to the Alps. Um, and it was
yeah,
very much just a situation of how much can he just, kick his teeth in for the week elevation wise and get some quality training in. And then, at the end of the day, I'm there to film him and do the job and support his
right.
sponsors. So yeah, sure. Sometimes I'd like to ride, but I can also separate it because I'm loving what I'm doing filming and I see the story unfolding, and I'm very
Yeah,
content with being on the backside of it too sometimes.
I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. One of the things I loved about riding in Europe, especially in France specifically, was the Pignot's name is everywhere.
Mm.
Thibaut Pinot, right? He just retired from professional cycling. But, whether you're uh, Alpe d'Huez, Ventoux, pick some of these French Alp climbs, and Pinot is everywhere.
Everywhere.
We saw it on like it was on there was like a fence with a pink bike on it and it said
Yeah.
Pinot. It's just like how I just can't even imagine what that must feel like. Because I was trying to think like, is there an American equivalent to something like that?
That was my next question I was going to ask you. I
Yeah,
don't know. And
I
I
don't
don't
think there
think there
is.
is really. No,
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately.
But
Yeah.
man, yeah, it was so special being over there. And of course, the year that I went, it was just a couple years ago, but I'm thinking, oh, I got to get back here somehow.
Yeah.
I want to do it again. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
so great. I'd love to take my wife this next time, but that would involve less bike time. So, I got to weigh that out.
I thought about the same things because it's funny when I experience a beautiful place like this, no matter where it is, the first thing I think of is when can I come back and who can I share this experience with that I care
Yeah,
about? I need them to see it too, right? So
right.
it's whatever balance that is, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's
no
cool.
doubt. All right. Well, of all the things that you've been up to, adventuring as
Sure.
a freelance adventurer,
Yeah.
what would you say? I mean, this is hard, but like, is there one that really stands out above all others?
That I've done in the past, you mean?
Hmm.
It's really hard to say because like I don't think it's I don't want to say healthy, but I don't think it's healthy to always want to like top everything, right?
Right.
So
Yep.
when I went to Mount Everest, for some people that may be the craziest thing you'd ever do in your life. And I
Yeah.
went there and it was the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. But I didn't want to come home and then try to like, oh, what can I do that's bigger than Everest or bigger than this? And
Yeah.
so like I think collectively all these things, just combine to be this wild story that just
Hmm.
is ever evolving. And before you know it, years pass by and it's like, oh yeah, I did go to Mount Everest last year. Oh, I did try to do the Continental Divide last year. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, not to be redundant, but yeah, for sure, Nepal was on the top.
Sure.
Trying the
Yeah.
Continental Divide was on the top, which I'm absolutely going to get back and do redemption on. Um,
You gonna pull it
I've
off
done.
next time? Do you know where you messed up, so to speak, or where you didn't quite have it figured out?
Yeah, I not to get away from your question, but I got injured about 800
Oh
miles
yeah, I read
ish
that.
in Butte,
Yep.
Montana. My knee just went.
Hmm.
Don't get new shoes a week before you leave.
Oh yeah. I was thinking
27.
the shoes look great too, by the way.
Yeah,
So if
they were a little
you're gonna
too
do
fresh.
it, yeah. Yeah.
And I went into that journey, to be honest, like a little naive, but kind of intentionally. I think when you're trying to do something of that magnitude, there's a bit of there's a bit of bliss in not knowing what's ahead and trying
Yeah.
not to educate myself too much with what's ahead, because
Hmm.
I think you just get too far into your mind and you need to just go do the thing, right? It's like
Yeah.
a lot of people were asking me, "Oh, are you trained for the divide yet? Are you ready to go tackle that?" And it's like, dude, you can't train for the divide. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
you, you're gonna ride your bike every day, and eventually your body's gonna understand what's happening, and it's gonna
Uh,
adapt or not. You know.
right. Right.
But yeah, I just my knee went and it buckled out from under me one day, and I was quite sure I tore something, but uh, the risking the idea of like worsening an injury like that and ruining my summer ahead was just
Sure.
not really worth it to me. So I
Yeah.
pulled off the trail, and we were doing anywhere from we averaged about 100 miles a day, and
Solid.
for I know certain, it, it's hard. There's levels we get so how do I say, like we get so numb to the fact of all these records that are being broken, and Lachlan's a good friend as well, and he's
Yeah.
who inspired me to do it. Actually gave me his whole bike packing setup for the divide
Oh,
that he
nice.
did on his record. So I was like, oh well, I have to do it now,
Yeah.
and just realizing that like you know these are crazy, crazy feats that we're doing. I'm just a normal guy. I'm not a pro athlete by any
Yeah.
means. By day 700 miles of a 50-pound bike over all these passes, you sort of realize, hey, like it's okay that you're not going to do it in 12 days too,
Yeah.
You're
Right.
probably more likely to do it in 45 days.
Uh,
And that's okay. That does not mean you are slow. It means you're normal.
right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think kind of to go back to your question in terms of one that tops it all, yeah, it would be the divide, and not from a photography standpoint, but from just how I think about riding bikes standpoint. It
Hmm.
definitely kind of changed my perspective on why I ride a bike, how I would do it differently next time. I'm definitely going to do a lot of things differently, and kind of just change my appetite for fun. I used to go out and, whack myself and train really hard, even though I'm not a pro athlete and all this stuff. And I did Leadville, and that was a super big high. But
Yeah.
the divide taught me that just like, if it's not fun, then why are you doing it?
Hmm.
Because I always romanticized something like the divide. And I only had 30 days to do it, which meant 100 miles roughly for 30 days straight. And
Yep.
by about day 6 or 7, I was like, this is cool. I'm getting the mileage done, but I'm just like, I think I'm about 5 days from this distance every day not being fun,
Uh-huh.
And I was like, it's the most gorgeous thing I've ever done on a bike by far. It's just the most beautiful places across North America, and you're like, hey, the next town's 30 miles away. Why can't we just stop there?
Hmm.
Oh, well,
Right.
we have to stick to this pace because we got to get to the next town because we got to go fast. You got to go fast. And it's like, oh, that's not really what it's about.
Yeah.
You know, that was a
Yeah.
big shift for me because it was always about how fast can I get this done? And I realized like that's for everyone else but me.
Hmm.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah, but still though,
Yeah,
you pulled Leadville off, right?
sure.
That was with a different mindset, I
Yeah,
guess,
totally different
right?
mindset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that was before the divide, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, right?
Yep. Correct. Yep. That was
Yeah.
the prior year. And
Yeah.
sure, I'll probably be a hypocrite and train hard and do another hard race and try to go fast one of these years. But
I
yeah,
think
it was just a
yeah, I think
reminder.
there's merit to both,
Yeah, there
right?
is.
Because I think that a lot of the, I don't know what to say, euphoria, okay,
Mhm.
but like that's on the other side of the suffer, right? A
Sure.
lot of times it's on the other, like you can go ride and see beauty and have
Mhm.
a good time, but if you're just cruising around, you're not really, there's something different that happens when you push yourself to the brink or near the
Yes.
brink and then you crest the top of the mountain or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I don't know if it's like maybe you feel it's not something where you, I don't know. I don't think like I really think like, wow, I'm really proud of myself. That
Sure.
never occurs. But
Yeah.
maybe something is happening in your brain that's like
Yeah.
triggering all this stuff that otherwise wouldn't be there, you know?
Yeah.
If you just cruise to the top, you know?
It's like a chemical thing, right?
Yeah.
It is funny because I mean, yeah, whether you're chasing a sub 9 big belt buckle at Leadville,
Yeah.
or whether like is I think that's what made me want to do the divide is Leadville always scared me shitless, right? Like I was
Yeah.
like, I don't think I'm that guy that could ever do this, right?
Yeah.
And then
Wrong.
I trained really hard. I loved the process. It was fun, and I, I had my day, and I was
Yeah.
like, cool, I did it. And I thought I was gonna have to come back, and I did that. And I'm like, well, what's the next thing that really, really scares me? And it wasn't Leadville anymore. I was
Yeah.
like, I know I can do a 100-mile race. I know I can do it that fast. I was like, Unbound, like it's probably not a question of if I can do it, it's just how fast I can do it. And I'm like, what's the next thing that I can do that I have no idea if I've ever been to that place mentally, physically. And it was just
Right.
ride my bike to Mexico, you know?
Well, when you're talking about, blissfully ignorant or, you didn't want to get too much information beforehand, I'm kind of going through this
Yeah,
myself right now because,
yeah,
okay, so let me back up a little bit. So I
sure.
sponsor, we Giant, we sponsor this team in Sacramento. It's called Enjoy Cycling. And
Mm,
the guy
sure.
who's the founder of it is this guy, Vince Murdoch. He's an MMA guy, UFC fighter, but he's really taken to cycling. He's very serious about his
Got it.
cycling. And so we had him on the podcast
Cool.
after last
Yeah.
year's Unbound, and he did Unbound XL.
Mm,
And I was giving him crap about it
cool.
because I said, yeah, I mean, 100 miles, 200 miles, it's not enough. You got to go for 350. What are you trying to prove? And I was just, talking junk.
Yeah,
And he goes, man,
sure.
he goes, I wanted to sign up for something where I didn't even know if I could actually do it. And for some
Yeah,
reason, that like really resonated with me. So I signed up and I had
cool.
to go lottery. And then it came. And like when the congratulation email came, like
Yeah.
my heart kind of sank a little bit. I was just like, oh no, I guess I'm doing
Oh
this
no.
now, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, Vince and I, we ride together from time to time. Whatever. So we talking and I'm just like, you know what? Well, at first I wanted to know everything about it. Now it's more
Yeah.
like, maybe less is more. I think,
That's this year coming up.
yeah, it's coming up
So
May.
you're doing the XL as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Doing it.
That's
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big
Yeah.
deal. And it's funny because I follow you. I followed you for a while. I understand
Yeah.
you ride your bike a lot,
Yeah.
but you don't do anything like that.
No, no.
Yeah.
I haven't done, that's going to be the longest I've ever been on my bike at one time.
Yep.
I've done a couple of high roller rides. I don't know if
Sure.
you know what that is, but the
No.
10,000 meter of elevation rides, in one day or 2 days you do it. And so I think on that I was like 18 hours.
Huh.
But anyway,
Massive. Yeah.
this is going to be 24 hours if I really nail my nutrition and
For
everything,
sure.
So
Yeah.
that's going to be something pretty wild. I've put aero bars on my
Yeah.
gravel bike.
Got
I saw
to.
you had aero bars on the Divide. Now,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so did that help you relax? Were you able to put your elbows in there and just
Yeah.
kind of take a load off of everything?
Yeah, it had nothing to do with speed. It's
Yes.
I used
Yeah.
to only think as air bars is something that people, used to use it unbound to, just cut through wind. And I quickly realized I talked to a lot of people about bike setup as I was going into my attempt at the divide. And it was very clear that like those aero bars are just three more hand positions, just
Yeah.
pure comfort. Yeah, it was nice to be able to just lay down, if you will, for a bit.
Yeah. So I put some on, but they're too low. The
Mm,
ones that I have, and I don't have the shim. Somebody gave them to me as a buddy of mine.
yep.
He's like, "Oh, I got a set," and
Yep.
but I gotta adjust that because I know like in like there's been a couple times where I've been like doing the Everesting or something where it's
Sure.
like 13 hours or something, and my hands get
Yeah.
so sore
Yeah.
like literally just any like I remember I was holding the flat part of the road bar with my
Sure.
fingertips
Hmm.
because every other part of my hand was so sore.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking that that'll be somewhere I can just kind of okay,
Yeah.
relax and just still keep pedaling, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
I mean, I think the more hand positions or really hand relief, the better. It's funny. I had a mountain bike for the Continental Divide, and I honestly don't know why anyone would do a drop bar bike for something like that. It's pretty crazy how numb your hands can go doing that distance for that amount of time. I mean, I was chatting with Lachlan after his, and he said after his Continental Divide record, he couldn't, feel the inside of his palm for upwards of 4 months.
Whoa.
It's wild the amount of nerve damage and stuff you can do
Yeah.
in that short amount
And
of
that was
time.
on
So
Lachlan had a mountain bike bar. Sorry to interrupt you there.
on there he did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's the thought I always have. It's like one position, even though it might be more comfortable, it's just one
Yeah.
position the whole time, right? Whereas with the road bar,
Yeah.
at least you can
No,
kind of move
totally.
yourself around a little bit.
And that's why even like I think drop bars, at least you can do the air bars, you can do like a tog or something on the inside. But even in my
Hmm.
flat bar, I had aero bars, I had internal grips, I had outer, just constantly switching it up because that fatigue can set in faster than you think.
Hmm. Did you train with those aero bars, or did you just kind of, you got the bike set up and then I don't know. Was there any specific training with aero
No,
bars?
dude. I mean, speaking of naiveness, I probably went a little too extreme with how unprepared I was. And I wasn't because I was avoiding it. I was actually like shooting gigs up to the day I left. I did not have time to try. If I were to change anything, I would train my setup more. I'd be
Okay.
riding my bike fully loaded. The way
Yeah.
I would literally camp with it, the way I would take food in and out of my bags, really get your actual setup dialed and ride your bike like that before you head out. That was the first time my bike had weighed over, 30 something plus pounds. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I figured out what that felt like as I was rolling into Canada. And I was like, oh no,
Yeah.
this is heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's it's getting you, it's not about so much training your legs, right? It's like the training for 350 XL or the training for a 2,000 mile mountain bike ride, all that training's been done your prior years of cycling.
Yeah.
You're going to
Yeah.
ride into that or you're not. But
It
your
just gets
setup,
into
I would say, is
mental, I
important.
think,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's so mental.
So
Even though
mental.
everything on your body is screaming, it's still your mental that's going to get you through.
I'm
The
not like an ultra guy, if you will, but I do believe one of my favorite photographers, Chris Burkhardt,
Mhm.
he's also a phenomenal endurance cyclist. And I like the way he said this once is there comes a point like in every ultra ride where your body finally accepts that you're not stopping. Right.
Mhm.
And it's almost like kind of like a second day starts, right? Like all
Yep.
the pain goes away, all this stuff. And I feel like you need to know what that is before you should probably go out and do that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's a
Yeah.
great way to put it.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, so what do you got on the schedule for 2025? You got anything super cool that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. 2025 looks a lot different for me this year. It was always kind of the freelance hustle, the try to get jobs throughout the season. And I always shoot the full lifetime Grand Prix calendar with Alexi. I'm there for him shooting his races. But this
Awesome.
is the first year Alexi and I are taking a really big jab at our YouTube channel. Uh, we really are trying to build a personal brand that is the both of us. And one, to give him a platform for his sponsors, right? And
Yeah.
show racing and, give that value, but also to just show people kind of what it's like the full behind the scenes as a pro athlete to not only race at the top level, but what it takes to do media, me behind
Right.
I turn the camera on myself a lot and kind of show that full story. And yeah, show the ins and outs of everything from training, nutrition to trips, and then like the highest end racing we can possibly do. So we kind of set a goal for ourselves, 2 to 3 videos every single month. That's like our bar that we're setting
Okay.
ourselves. We've tried YouTube for years now, and we kind of failed at it because we weren't consistent. And you realize that consistency pays in that platform. You have to feed the
Definitely.
machine.
Yep.
So we're putting a lot of sweat equity into it, if you will. Like I'm definitely not getting paid to do any of that stuff. And it takes a lot of my time and
Oh
it's
boy.
not cheap. But we have the support of his sponsors and they believe in it. So yeah, I never thought I would say this. I used to kind of cringe at the idea of being a YouTube personality, but I realize how much merit the platform has, and I'm sure you see it. It's the wave is here.
Yeah.
Every rider, every team, like that is the platform going forward. And I think it's a really special place to share content and media and what you're doing. It's a much more engaged audience, and we really like that rather than
Hmm.
someone doom scrolling through. So it feels like people are there to actually enjoy what you want to put out there. So
Well, I think it's really smart, and it really speaks to, you know, ha- beyond, I mean, there for longevity's sake,
Mhm.
for securing better deals.
Exactly.
and just making yourself much more relevant
Yeah.
for, you have your sponsors now that you definitely want to take care of, and
Sure.
hopefully they'll be your sponsors long term.
Mhm.
But also, maybe there's some other great sponsors that could come your way. I know some
Yeah.
of I think it was it Kate Courtney just got a deal with
Yeah.
an autumn with Rivian,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Mhm.
So I mean, there's opportunities out there if you can package it and present it properly, and it's
Yeah.
super pro. Uh, I mean, the sky's the limit. And
Uh, yeah.
y- you know,
Exactly.
we had Jeff Lenoski.
I know the name. Yeah.
Yeah, so he has his own Trail Boss, the
Yeah. Exactly.
YouTube.
Yep.
This guy's been like a professional cyclist for like, I don't know, 35, 40
Sure.
years,
Hmm.
just making content and really being pro.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's possible,
Yeah.
even though the sport that he competed in was observed trials, they
Sure.
don't even do that anymore.
No.
So, but still, he's able to maintain relevance and secure great sponsors and keep on riding his bike, and that's what we're all trying to do, right?
Exactly. How long
Yeah.
can we keep the train running?
Yeah.
It is funny though. I think you said it well. I think, whether you like it or not, the space is changing, right? As an athlete,
Yep.
sure, there will always be Tadejs and Vanderpools that their job's to ride their bike, and that's all they need to do, and that's
That's right.
great. But it's interesting, domestic racing, especially off-road, it is kind of part of the job description now to have a little bit of a brand with yourself because
Hmm.
that's what people are relating to. And I think that's what makes gravel so special and off-road racing so special in the US is it is a bit more relatable. It is obtainable, right?
Yeah.
You are not lining up at Strada Bianche, but you are lining up at Unbound, right?
Yeah.
And just 10 ways ahead of you is the best of the best, which is kind of a special experience. And I think if we can show that through whatever platform that is, YouTube in this case, it can build something that transcends beyond cycling, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
cool that you can build a brand that has its legs and you can get these non-endemic sponsors and sort of build something that goes beyond your cycling career. Because I mean, Alexi and I are very much looking at this not only as maybe what he's looking to do post-career, but this is also my current career, right?
Sure.
It's two things, and that's sort of why we've packaged it. It's funny, we're kind of rebranding. It's the channel is Alexi and Avery, but we're starting an agency called A Squared because
Oh,
the
okay.
two of us, Alexi and Avery, and we're kind of becoming interchangeable. Um, and we're realizing that showing my production value, even though it's just silly YouTube videos, is actually already bringing us real commercial work,
Yeah.
uh,
Great.
which is cool. So yeah, that's kind of the idea.
All right. So you said you have the goal. Is there a specific metric that you're trying to achieve, or is it more just about the overall concept of just getting this thing up and running and really at the level that you want it to be?
We set ourselves a hard goal, and that's not because of like a revenue dollar or what it means that comes with that number.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just set an arbitrary number. Let's try to end the year with 30,000 subscribers,
There you
um,
go.
and see what that can do for us. And again, that's just like I think I do better with a carrot to chase or a North Star to point to rather than
Yeah.
just try to grow, you know.
Hmm.
And I have a lot of friends who have had gobs of success in that platform, upwards of millions of subscribers, and it's really cool to see what's possible as you grow your audience. So
Yeah.
just kind of chunking away at pieces and setting goals within that goal. 30,000 subscribers. Can we do that with 3 videos a month and then back it up? And can we do that with our crazy calendar? And yeah, I think we're already starting to make revenue, and it's not about revenue, but revenue helps, right?
Hmm.
And I think as we kind of move that star further and further, it'll be fun to see where we can take it. But for now, that's the number. Try to get
Right.
30,000 by the end of the year and see where that lands us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's certainly a career to be had post racing career. I mean,
Mhm.
if you look at like Phil Guyman, look what he's
Absolutely.
doing.
Mhm.
It's certainly possible.
Mhm.
You're going to build this fan base over
Sure.
this time, and then when it's time to step down or dial it back a notch,
Mhm.
it still doesn't mean that your fan base might want to check out. Maybe they still want to tag along and see what
Yeah.
else is on the table. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really smart play, and yeah, wish you the best with it. So it's
Yeah.
A squared. Is that what it's going to be called, or is it
So the
Alexi and
channel
Avery?
is Alexi and Avery. If you go
Yes.
to YouTube and type in Alexi and Avery, that's where you'll find us.
Okay.
Um, I just told you that because like the actual LLC we're forming is called A Squared for
Got
like
it.
our agency, if you will, when we do real commercial work. But yeah, the
Yeah.
brand is Alexi and Avery. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So beyond the YouTube goals for this year,
Mhm.
is there more travel ahead for you, or is it still? I mean, other Lifetime, obviously, that's a big schedule.
Yep.
Beyond Lifetime, are there any other maybe trips to Nepal or anything cool like that?
So Lifetime is definitely the most set in stone calendar of the year.
Yeah.
Those dates are not moving at all. So yeah, we will do the full Lifetime Grand Prix, and then it's kind of just fitting in anything that we think is fun and worth it for us in between, which sometimes is hard. It's kind of funny with the Grand Prix kind of being what everyone looks to now in gravel. It takes up a lot of your year.
Yeah.
And then in
Yeah.
between that, it's like, yeah, we could do this, but is it worth the squeeze? Is it worth the cash?
Right.
Is Alexi, his job is he wants to win, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's also balancing what he can manage physically, what I can manage, with my actual work I'm doing. Um, but right now it's the Grand Prix. We're gonna sprinkle in races here and there like Levi's Grand Fondo, Belgian waffle rides,
Got it.
stuff like that. And then we're talking about doing some big adventures too, potentially like the Traca 200, squeezing that in Girona.
Okay.
More
Whoa.
more travel-based adventure stuff that, at the end of the day, the racing's so cool. People are here to see the best of the best, and people love that stuff. But I think we really want to make media and content around inspiring people to do things that they might want to go do, right?
Yeah.
And that's not always racing. That's going on a bike packing trip in Girona. That's,
Yeah.
doing the Tour Divide together. That's showing educational stuff, you name it. So anything we can sprinkle in there,
Hmm.
we will do. But nothing like Nepal on the horizon right now. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean I won't get a call next week saying, "Can you be there in a week?" So
Yeah.
we're open
Yes
to it.
is the answer.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun just seeing your career kind of progress and all the
Yeah.
good fortune and great adventures you're having, and wish you nothing but more success and more great adventures ahead.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so all right, well, I know you have some editing to do. Uh,
Sure. Always. Always.
always, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, well, maybe we'll wrap it up here, but
You're good.
so if you want to follow along with Avery and Alexi and Avery on YouTube,
Mhm.
and Avery Stumm, Stumm,
Correct.
on Instagram. And is there anything else you want to promote before we wrap this thing up?
No, I would say that's it. Those are kind of where I'm living this year. My own personal Instagram page is just, my name, Avery_Stumm, and then everything in between will be on that Alexi and Avery YouTube channel. So if you just keep the bell on any of those places and see what we're up to, we'll be doing a lot of stuff every single month, all the way through December. So
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely click the old subscribe button.
appreciate it.
I'm on board. It's always fun to support friends, and I love what you guys are doing. So it's very
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on the podcast, everybody. Thank you, Avery. It's been an absolute pleasure, and maybe we'll have you back sometime.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right. That's going to do it, everybody. Thank you. If you like what we're doing here at Cycle Jerks Podcast and you would like to support us, please check out our website at cyclejerkspodcast.buzzsprout.com. Hit the subscribe button. We shout out all subscribers, so get on it. Another way you can support the podcast would be by giving us a 5-star review on whatever streaming platform that you're listening on. We appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Cycle Jerks.
Hey, get out of the road, dummy.
Cycle Jerks Podcast.